IGN First for the month of June 2022 is all about Sonic Frontiers. We've got gameplay, we've got previews, and we've got interviews from the developers who made it all happen. All month long, we'll be diving deep into what you can expect when the game makes its way to you later down the road. First up, we've got the world premiere gameplay focusing on exploring the mysterious island that Sonic suddenly finds himself stranded on at the start of the game. Be sure to stick with IGN throughout June so you don't miss anything. Until then, here's your first look at gameplay from Sonic Frontiers. IGN First continues on with yet another look at Sonic Frontiers gameplay, this time focusing on combat. Sonic is up against an all-new set of baddies, some of which are among the most massive bosses we've ever seen in a Sonic game. Fortunately, Sonic's got some new tricks up his sleeve. Make sure to stick with IGN all throughout June because we've got a full hands-on preview and interviews from the developers in store. For now though, enjoy the combat of Sonic Frontiers. Sonic's done a lot in 30 years. He's been a pioneer of the high-speed 2D platformer, an Olympic athlete, a respectable kart racing enthusiast, a fighter, a TV star, and a Hollywood blockbuster movie star as well. But he's never done open world, and Sonic Frontiers fixes to change that. I was fortunate enough to be one of the first people outside of Sonic Team to go hands-on with Sonic Frontiers, and let me just say, if you're worried about how the blue blur will fare in this unfamiliar genre, well, I think Crush 40 probably put it best. Open your heart, it's gonna be alright. The first thing that struck me about Sonic Frontiers was how uniquely somber and serene it was right from the outset. After flying into a wormhole with Tails and Amy, Sonic finds himself separated from his friends and all alone on an isolated island, with nothing but an AI voice guiding him to collect the Chaos Emeralds. There's no one for Sonic to bounce quips off of, no energetic Crush 40 soundtrack, just wide open fields as far as the eye can see. There's an air of mystery in Sonic Frontiers, and it's a vibe that's driven home even further by the beautiful yet minimalist piano melodies that accompany Sonic as he explores the island. All of this is a very intentional choice. I asked Sonic Team head Takashi Iizuka to describe how the tone of Sonic Frontiers differs from previous Sonic games, and he said, past games in the Sonic series have taken different tones depending on their stories and themes. This time, these mysterious islands are the game's major setting. That's why our artists have worked hard to create a mysterious mood. Of course, the big new change in Sonic Frontiers is the shift from purely linear levels to a huge open world where Sonic can freely run in any direction. But Sonic Team doesn't like to use the term open world to describe Sonic Frontiers' gameplay, instead referring to its style as being open zone. Open world games like Zelda or other AAA games fundamentally have RPG or adventure worlds. For Sonic, the core here is a 3D action game. Our basic idea was to have that take place in open space. What sets Sonic Frontiers apart is this different approach to an open game world. Having played Sonic Frontiers for about 4 hours, it's easy to see what Iizuka-san means. Sonic Frontiers' open zone design is very different from any other open world I've played. It's a giant playground. Every few feet there's a bumper spring that bounces you like a pinball between 5 other bumpers before putting you on one of the many grindable rail tracks. Or a speed ramp that sets you on a completely different path leading to some other collectible or reward. Or a line of rings that you can lightspeed dash into. Essentially, they've taken that core appeal of every Sonic level having multiple paths that eventually loop back around to the main one, and applied that to these giant non-linear open zones. One thing that has to be noted is that very few of these elements are built into the environmental design, meaning that rails, platforms, boost rings, and so on are just inexplicably floating in the air all around, which isn't totally unusual for a Sonic game, but it feels especially jarring in Frontiers in particular because of the frequent and sudden pop-in of these objects and the otherwise very naturalistic art style. Of course, it's worth emphasizing that this gameplay and the version that I played were from an early build, but this is definitely an area that I would hope to see improvement in the final version. Beyond that, there are also a wide variety of puzzles and challenges that are littered throughout the zone, and completing them is how you uncover sections of your map. Most of these are very simple, requiring you to orient a statue the correct way, quickly hop back and forth between colored tiles, or use Sonic's new side loop ability to draw circles around certain objects in the environment to interact with them. The best ones though are the races against the clock where you have to get from point A to point B in a limited amount of time. The openness of Frontiers level design makes straightforward races like these a ton of fun, because you have to try and improvise a path to the end that might not be immediately obvious. There are some exceptions, but combat in traditional Sonic games generally isn't a thing that goes much deeper than jumping, rolling, or using a homing attack into enemies at the right time. That changes in Sonic Frontiers, which now has you fighting all sorts of wandering enemies and mini-bosses using an all-new array of incredibly flashy attacks. It's not all style and no substance though. Sonic is able to quickly dodge using the bumper buttons on the gamepad, and by pressing them together, he can even parry attacks with the right timing. His homing attack also feels much more powerful, landing with a ton of impact and keeping Sonic stuck to his enemy, allowing for a flurry of follow-up strikes. One of the things that I really appreciate about the combat from what I played is that there are usually multiple ways to deal with specific enemies. Like, take for example this guy, who has an impenetrable shell that he can expand into spinning blades and throw at you. One way to deal with him is just to carefully time your homing attacks so you don't get hit by the blades. But if you do that, the window to damage him is small. To increase that window, you can either parry the blades and knock them away right before they hit you, or you can even use Sonic's side loop ability to encircle the enemy, which causes the shell to go flying upwards. Defeating these enemies will reward you with EXP that you can use to purchase new skills from a skill tree, which gives Sonic Frontiers a really nice feeling of power progression, even in just the relatively short amount of time that I played. Some of the later skills that you can get are just unbelievably cool, and it's super satisfying to see Sonic Team experiment with different ways that Sonic can attack enemies beyond just spins, jumps, and bumps. In addition to these smaller enemies, there are also a handful of enormous world bosses that I had to contend with. These are near Shadow of the Colossus-esque in their scale, with one in particular against a beast named Asura requiring Sonic to bait the Titan to slam the ground and then boost up its arm in order to reach the weak spots on its head. It's an ambitious boss battle, far beyond anything I've seen in the Sonic series to date, but it's also the part of the game that needs the most work. Far too often I'd fly off the boss's arm without knowing why, or I'd get to the top and for some reason lack the momentum needed to actually reach the head. Sonic must hunt down and defeat these bosses in order to collect portal gears, which open up portals that lead to bite-sized linear stages, done in the style of previous Sonic games, giving Sonic Frontiers a nice mix of both old and new styles. These classic levels each come with a handful of optional goals, like beating the level under a certain time, collecting all the red rings, and so on, with each goal rewarding you with a vault key, which are needed to unlock the coveted Chaos Emeralds. Sonic Frontiers is an exciting new step forward for the Sonic series into uncharted territory, and based on my time with it, Sonic Team seems to have hit upon a winning formula. There's certainly still work to be done before it's released during the holiday season. There's a lot of distracting pop-in, there's a fair amount of bugs still left to be squashed, and the big boss fights could do with some tweaking. But ultimately, my time with this early build answered the one question I had on my mind. Will Sonic's one-of-a-kind gameplay translate into an open world? The answer is a resounding absolutely. Thanks for watching, and tune into IGN for more Sonic Frontiers coverage as part of IGN First. And for everything else, keep it here on IGN.
To celebrate Sonic Frontiers, we are excited to present a sneak peek of a new animated special. Featuring Knuckles and taking place before the events of the game. We hope you enjoy this exclusive first look. We look forward to sharing the entire short later this year, prior to the release of Sonic Frontiers.
ソニックも今年で31年になりまして、これまで2D のクラシックソニックとあと 3D のモダンソニックと、2つのシリーズでこの30年やってきましたけども、これからのソニックを作るにあたって、今までの 3D ソニックとは違う新しいチャレンジをしてより自由度の高い 3D アクションを作ろうという目標のもとにこのプロジェクトがスタートしました。そうですね、最初にソニックフォースを作り終わった後に、次の ソニックをどうするかっていう、ブレインストーミングをしてたんですけども、やっぱり今までの従来のリニアな3D ソニックのゲームですと、やっぱりどうしてもその進化に、幅がないというか、もう皆さんの見たことあるゲーム内容にしかやっぱり作り変えることができないということで、このリニアなゲームプレイをどう変えていくかっていうところが一番プロジェクトの初期に、チームメンバーと一緒に、話し合ったところですね。先ほどお話ししましたように、このプロジェクトの、アイディアの、要因はリニアなソニックゲームをいかにこう自由度の高いアクションゲームにするかっていうところがスタート地点なので、いわゆるオープンワールドのアクションアドベンチャーゲームとは起点が違うんですね。なのでベースとしてはソニックの 3D アクションゲームをいかに自由度の高いものにするかっていうところで我々の考えたのがこのオープンゾーンという新しいゲームシステムです。いわゆるオープンワールドの、ゼルダとかその他の、AAA の、オープンワールドゲームっていうのは基本その世界をRPG とかアドベンチャーでオープンワールドっていうのを味付けしたゲームだと思うんですけども、このソニックの場合は 3D アクションゲームがコアであって、でそれをオープンなスペースで行うっていうところが、アイディアの起点なので、そういったゲームとはちょっとアプローチの仕方がオープンな世界に対するアプローチの仕方が違うというところが、大きな特徴ですね。はい、まずこのオープンゾーンの島では、いろんなものを見つけたり、そこにソニックらしい 3D アクションが楽しめる部分もあるんですけども、これとは別にもう一つソニックらしい従来のソニックらしいリニアなハイスピードアクションを楽しむステージを用意してまして、こちらは従来のモダンソニックシリーズの 3D アクションが好きな方たちが楽しめるように、今までのテクニックや今までのアクションを駆使して進むアクションゲーム、このオープンゾーンと従来の 3D アクションを一つの島に一つにマージさせることで、従来よりも幅のある 3D アクションを楽しんでもらえればと思っています。島で探索することが、このソニックフロンティアの楽しみの一つなんですけども、3D アクションをしたり、その島を探索して何を発見するかっていうところですね。でこの島にはソニックフロンティアにはさまざまな仕掛けが島の中にしてありまして、その一つがこのパズルの謎の解きの部分ですね。こちらはアクションゲームのテクニックを使うものもあれば、頭を使うものもあるという感じで、さまざまな遊びをそのパズルの中に入れ込むことによって、この島を一つ一つアンロックエリアをアンロックしていって、遊べるエリアを広げるという、そういう楽しみがあります。今回のソニックフロンティアはグラフィックの見た目も従来のソニックシリーズとは断然違うリアルな雰囲気を持っていると思うんですけども、ストーリーにしても、いわゆるソニックのゲームっていうのは、悪いことが起こったなんとかしようっていうふうに、すごくダイレクトにお客さんに何をしなきゃいけないか、何をするストーリーなのかっていうのが分かりやすく表現してたんですけども、今回のソニックフロンティアに関してはこの島にたどり着いたソニックが一体何をすればいいのか、何をすれば友達を助けられるのか、そういういろんな疑問に対してお客さんもソニックも一緒になって島を探してそれを見つけ出すっていうところがこのソニックフロンティアのテーマなんですね。なのでサウンドトラックに関してもいわゆるそのステージに合ったテンポのいい楽曲というよりは、そのミステリアスな島の雰囲気を盛り上げる楽曲ということにフォーカスして作っています。今回は先ほども少しお話ししましたけど、ミステリアスな島というところが、一つのこのソニックフロンティアの大きな舞台なんですね。なのでそのミステリアスな雰囲気を演出するためのグラフィックをうちのアーティストは心がけてます。本当に30年前からソニックのことを好きだった方はもうすごい大人になってるし、若い 映画とかで新しく入った若いファンの方もいると思うんですけども、これからのソニックブランドっていうのはやはりその若い子から大人まで両方をこれからもゲームタイトルやその他メディアでフォローしていきたいと思っています。そのための今回のタイトル陣ですけども、まず6月にソニックオリジンズが出ます。これはまさしく昔遊んだソニックを遊んだ方から新しくソニックをこれから始めようという方までまさに最適な、ソニックのオリジンズとなるゲームタイトルですね。でそれから今回のソニックフロンティアのようにもう 3D ソニックを遊び尽くした方にもがさらに新しい驚きが発見できるような新しいタイトルっていうのも作り続けていきますので、これからはそういうふうにタイトルごとにターゲット層を分けてこれからもソニックファンの方に作品を届けていきたいなと思っています。もちろん私は過去のインタビューでも答えたことがあるんですけども、ソニックアドベンチャーシリーズをいつか継続させたいという思いはあります。で、ソニックアドベンチャーでもアドベンチャーフィールドという、小さなオープンなスペースがありましたけども、そういった技術も、今回のフロンティアにこう生かされてきているのかなと。なので次のタイトルのことはまだ考えてないですけども、このソニックフロンティアの技術を使ってソニックアドベンチャーシリーズをまだできたらいいなとは個人的には思っています。
Use the gear as you have done before.
そのオープンゾーンが今回のソニックフロンティアの秘密兵器なんですけれども、オープンゾーンとは簡単に説明するとステージクリア型アクションゲームのワールドマップというのがあると思うんですけれども、ワールドマップ自体を遊べるようにしたもののことです。ファミコンで1988年に発売された「スーパーマリオブラザーズ3」が最初にステージクリア型アクションゲームにワールドマップを導入したタイトルだと思います。以降このワールドマップっていう仕組みはさまざまなステージクリア型アクションに広く使われるようになって今でも現役の仕組みになっています。このワールドマップという仕組みを遊べるワールドマップに進化させたものがソニックフロンティアのフィールドになります。オープンゾーンという舞台でどうやってステージクリア型アクションというジャンルのソニックゲームが進化するのかがこのタイトルの真骨頂なんです。コースという概念にとらわれない全方位へのハイスピードゲームプレイということになりますが、グラインドレールやプラットフォーミング、ループなどさまざまなアスレチックアクションとしてソニックゲームとして楽しめる要素が盛り込まれています。バトルに重点を置くことは過去ありませんでしたが、本作ではあえて本格的なバトルに取り組んでいます。ソニックらしいバトルが楽しめるがキーワードです。これも、今までになかった要素の一つになりますが、このヒントは映画のソニックの中にあるかもしれません。オープンゾーンの導入によって膨大なゲームボリュームが得られて長時間の遊べるようなゲームスタイルになりました。そこで必要になったのがモチベーションの維持という手法の一つとしてスキルツリーやレベル上げというステージクリア型アクションゲームとしてはちょっと異例になるんですけれども、導入することを決めました。任意の探索をするほどこのオープンゾーンに隠された設定の断片を知ることができ、この世界の真相に触れることができます。探索をすればするほどどんどん楽になるというようなことも可能になっています。寄り道するほど楽しめます。ゲームを進める上で必須にならない要素として謎解きというどちらかというと性的な要素の楽しみを導入することが可能になりました。謎解きの種類には頭の体操的なものからアクションのテクニックを要求するもの、ミニゲーム的なものとさまざまなバリエーションを用意しています。もちろんハイスピードなゲームスタイルが身上のソニックゲームですから、謎解きをプレイすることはゲームを進める上で必須にはしていません。でもきっと謎解きに夢中になるような仕掛けを用意していますので楽しみにしててください。 サイループはソニックの移動の軌跡を使って作る囲みのことで、オープンゾーンの採用によって実現できた新アクションです。囲んだ対象によってさまざまな効果が現れます。オブジェクトを囲んだ時、敵を囲んだ時、何もないところを囲んだ時、囲む対象が変わるごとに効果も変わるというものです。いろいろなものを囲んでみることでゲームの進行や攻略方法、ピンチからの脱出などさまざまな効果が現れるようになっています。時間や天候の変化はオープンゾーンをよりエモーショナルにするために導入を決めました。ゲームプレイに影響を与える要素は用意はしていますが、決してソニックゲームのハイスピードなゲームプレイを阻害するものにはならないように細心の注意を払って実装をしています。特定の日時にゲームプレイにポジティブな影響を及ぼすイベントを用意していますので、きっと皆さんびっくりすると思うので楽しみにしていてください。難易度が高くなること自体はステージクリア型アクションゲームにおいては自然なことなんですけれども、ここがソニックゲームの難しいところで、難易度の高さによる疾走感の喪失という矛盾を抱えていたんですね。しかしオープンゾーンによるゲームボリュームの確保が可能になったことから、ボリュームを稼ぐために難易度を上げるという必要がなくなったので、最初から最後まで疾走感を追求した理想的なレベルデザインのステージを用意することができました。これは難易度が低くてチャレンジがないと受け取れるかもしれませんが、そこは新しい仕組みを設けているので、チャレンジあるステージを用意しているのでご安心ください。クリアまでの時間はおよそ20から30時間のプレイボリュームになっています。やり込み要素やコンプリートを考えると2倍程度の時間が必要になります。ソニックファンの方にはステージのタイムアタックのやり込みが常識になっていると思いますが、今回のソニックフロンティアではゲームの最初から最後までのクリアをタイムアタックするっていう遊び方も楽しめるかもしれません。ステージクリア型アクションというジャンルでは、完全懲悪の分かりやすいドラマ、記号化された風景景色が主流ですけれども、ソニックというキャラクターなら、フォトリアルなビジュアルや、シリアスなストーリーによって競合のタイトルさんたちと差別化が可能だと考えています。この新しい遊び体験を経験していただける日を私は楽しみにしています。
Spin dash into a new zone. Sonic's latest action adventure kicks off on the vibrant Starfall Islands, home to a mysterious civilization. Here, you can freely dash through a vast open zone, taking full advantage of Sonic's speedy skills. Lock on and attack enemies standing in your way. Chain together attacks to trigger combos and rack up damage. With good timing, you can even deflect enemy attacks. Acquire skills to bolster Sonic's arsenal of moves. You can also enter a special zone called Cyberspace. Take on challenges at supersonic speeds and grab keys to progress. What awaits Sonic on these strange islands? Sonic Frontiers dashes onto Nintendo Switch this holiday.
Hey, Hey, what's up everyone? This is Mitchell Saltzman here with our very last feature for IGN First, featuring Sonic Frontiers, and this one's going to be a little looser, a little more casual. I've played 4 hours of Sonic Frontiers at this point, and now that all the embargoes are up and I'm able to talk about everything unrestricted, I wanted to answer some questions based on the 4 hours I played. So let's hit that title card and we'll jump right into it. Before we start proper though, I've got to give a bit of a fair warning. It's been more than a month since I had my last play session with Sonic Frontiers. I last played it in the middle of May, if you can believe it. So it's going off of what is no doubt an older build, but I'm also going off of memories that are a little bit dated. So, just understand that things could change and my memory of smaller details might not be 100%. So, just keep that in mind. Alright, so let's begin with probably the most commonly asked questions. I'm gonna just group a bunch of these together and let's talk about Cyberspace. What I think I'm gonna do is talk about this generally first before addressing specific questions about Cyberspace. I got to play 4 levels. You see 2 of them in that Nintendo Direct trailer. One of them is modeled after Green Hill Zone, and that's actually the very first thing that you get to play when you jump into Sonic Frontiers. There's an opening cutscene, and then you get thrown into Cyberworld, and you do that Green Hill Zone, basically. The second one is the Highway Zone that you see, which is probably like my favorite one that I got to play. That one was just awesome. There was one that was modeled after Chemical Plant Zone, and then there was one that was kind of like a Sky Temple. I don't really remember if it was based off of any prior Sonic games. It might have, but it's been a little while since I've played some of the older 3D Sonic games. So to answer the question from Flame Kit Fox about the length of the Cyberspace levels, to me they felt a bit short, and I say that because I believe I beat most, if not all of them, within 2 minutes, even on like my first try. And usually these 3D Sonic levels, they focus on different beats. You go from a really fast boost section to a 2D section and then back to a 3D section, whereas the levels in Sonic Frontiers felt pretty focused on 1 or 2 things. You would start off, it would be a boost focused section, then you'd go onto a rail, and then you'd go onto like a little platforming bit until you're back into a boost section, and then you get to the end of the level. So they felt shorter, but I don't really mean that in a negative way. I think they were actually just long enough where I wanted to keep on retrying them so I can get those goals. I mentioned this also in my preview. Every level has 5 goals, and every time you achieve a goal, you get a vault key, which allows you to unlock the Chaos Emeralds. So I played 4 hours of Sonic Frontiers, but honestly, most of that time was kind of spent in Cyberspace, because I'm the kind of person when I play a Sonic game where I wanna strive for those S ranks. I wanna strive for getting those goals. So I would keep on retrying until I get the level down pat. To me, that's the most fun I have when I play a Sonic game. It's that feeling of mastering a level and getting through it without slowing down. So I really strove to kind of get that experience every time I played one of these Cyberspace levels. So for me, I actually kind of like the shorter length, especially when consider the fact that it's not the full game. The Cyberspace is not the whole game. It is this mix of the open zone exploration and everything that you can do there, along with these Cyberspace levels. So yeah, in short, the levels are short, but I also don't think it's a huge problem. And then as for the second part of this question, are they closer to those of Unleashed, Generations, or Forces? I guess it's more similar to Unleashed and Generations because of the fact that there's no wisps. There's no wisps. Wisps is still a very hard word for me to say. It's just kind of purely focused on that modern, boost-focused 3D Sonic experience. As for the 2D sections, actually, I didn't get to play it, but my colleague Jeffrey Vega, who played about 2 hours of the game, he went a different way in the open zone and ended up finding a Cyberspace level that I didn't find. And he said that it was entirely 2D focused. So I think they're gonna mix it up a good amount with the Cyberspace levels in this game. Another thing that a lot of people really wanted to know about is momentum, and I feel a little bad about this one because I honestly didn't really think about it. Sonic's control felt fine to me. At the very least, it wasn't noticeably different from other boost-centric Sonic games, especially in the cyberspace levels. It's true that it doesn't really matter what speed Sonic hits a rail at, he'll still grind it all the same, but I also don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Now, there were definitely some weird moments, like I mentioned in the preview, where I was fighting the Asura boss, and I would run up the arm, and despite feeling like I should have enough momentum to reach the head, I would kind of just fly upwards and not have enough forward momentum to lock onto the head, and I would just kind of, fall back down to the ground. But to me, that felt more like an issue with the boss itself rather than an overall problem with momentum. So yeah, I wish I had a better answer for you than, the momentum didn't really bother me all that much, or, it feels very similar to other 3D boost-centric Sonic games, but, that's kind of where I'm at with momentum right now. Those were the two big ones that kept coming up, so I kind of wanted to group them all together. But now let's look at some more targeted questions. Lone Speedster DX asked, how does the combat work in Frontiers? The starting combo seems to be that punch and kick string, but how do any of the special attacks work? So the way it works is that when you homing attack onto something, you'll do the little punch kick combo, and then on the last hit, you'll kind of kick yourself away and you'll come back down to the ground. There are a couple of upgrades that you can get in the skill tree that add some sort of new attack to the end of that string. So that's where you see like this move and then this move. I think, and this is one of those things where don't quote me on this because again, I played this a month and a half ago, but I think that there is a combo counter. I think you get rewarded with a certain kind of power-up mode if you do a bunch of hits without getting hit. So there is a reward for being careful with regards to knowing when to lay off your attack and when the opponent is about to strike back. You can use a dodge to get out of the way. Dodges are on the L1 and R1 buttons, so you can just quickly get out of the way if something's about to attack you. You can use parries, you can lock on. Another one of the abilities that you can get is that kick attack. You can see right here where you kick a bunch of sound waves and it looks really awesome. That's generally how combat works. It's not this isn't Devil May Cry. I think the real test for the combat of this game will be enemy variety. There were a handful of enemies that all were a bit different, and I had to fight them a little bit differently in order to defeat them, but it's really going to be a matter of if they can keep on introducing new enemy types that keep having new and interesting ways to deal with them. And I think that's going to be the real test of whether combat is going to be exciting in the open world. Open zone. What does collecting those little rock guys do? Asked Vincent_mate. So collecting those little rock guys, it's kind of like Korok seeds in Breath of the Wild, where you solve a really simple puzzle, you find a Korok seed. You do the same thing in Sonic Frontiers. And what they do is that somewhere on the island is this elder rock guy. And if you get enough little rock guys, I wish I could remember the name for them right now. I'm sorry, again, a month and a half ago. If you get enough of those little rock guys and you bring them back to the Elder, he will either upgrade your speed or upgrade your maximum rings that you can carry. And you may be like, well, I understand, why I would want to upgrade my speed, obviously, but why would I want to upgrade my maximum rings? When you get hit in Sonic Frontiers, you don't just drop all your rings. You drop 40 rings. It's a set amount every time. And if you're able to collect 400 rings, I believe the cutoff is 400 rings, you're able to activate this super blue boost that envelops Sonic in this awesome blue aura. He's able to go even faster on his boosts, and he goes extremely fast. If you thought that Sonic Frontiers isn't fast enough, just trust me, once you get this blue boost, he moves plenty fast. And I wish I had footage of it because it was one of the cooler things that I got to experience in my playtime. Sonic Rich says, in your first 4 hours playing Frontiers, were you given the freedom to explore the first Starfall Island from the get-go, or were there points where you strictly had to follow the story path? No, you're pretty much able to go wherever you want when you first land on Starfall Island. Obviously, there is a main quest that you are constantly reminded of, but you're able to just go off in a direction. There's a bunch of puzzles to solve to open up your map. The map will tell you where Chaos Emeralds are. You'll be able to find more puzzles to open up more of the map. So there's actually a lot to do in the open zone. There's a bunch of collectibles to find, the aforementioned rock guys that you can grab. It doesn't really funnel you towards a certain path. You're kind of free to take on that critical path whenever you want. Alright, lightning round time. Let's do a bunch of them really quick. Was there any form of spin dash or rolling, albeit in his base moveset or the skill tree? No, but there is a drop dash. Was the light speed dash present at all? Yes. Is there a Chow Garden or at least Chow in the game? I can't speak for the whole game, but in the 4 hours that I played, not a single Chow was seen. From what I played, how was the music? It was good. One of the first things that me and Jeffrey talked about when we got out of our demo was how much we enjoyed the music. So it's not, it's not Crush 40, but it's very fitting and, it sounds nice in my ears. Alright, well, that is going to do it for me, and that is going to do it for our IGN first of the month of June for Sonic Frontiers. Thank you all so much for watching. Of course, if you missed any of our coverage, we've got a full hands-on preview. We've got an interview with director Kishimoto-san, an interview with Iizuka-san, the head of Sonic Team, and over on IGN.com we have a written interview with Ian Flynn, the writer of Sonic Frontiers. Thanks again for watching, and for everything else, keep it here on IGN.